Welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin. A lot of news since we've last spoke, and leading off is the Biden family corruption hunter, the big guy Joe, and it's starting to, even though the mainstream media is trying to ignore it, it's getting a lot more traction, and especially with today's congressional hearing, not hearing, uh, press
Press conference.
conference.
Yeah, it was more than just a press conference because and this really stands in stark contrast to what Adam Schiff had been doing all through the Trump administration. He kept saying, "We have evidence, we have evidence." He always refused to show what it was. He wouldn't talk about what it was. And then, of course, it turned out to be nothing. What they did at today's press conference is they actually released the bank records to the public and to the media so that everybody can see that, yes, the Biden family got payoffs from hostile powers. They did,
Romania and China in particular, yes.
yes, they did it in a way. And during the press conference, which most networks cut off before you got to this point because they didn't want you to see this, but they actually took you through the bank statements to explain that, yes, this is how the Biden family got the money. And the only reason to do it this way is to hide that they were getting money. They funneled money through 20 different LLCs, none of which actually sell any products or services. They were all shell companies.
Okay, then the big question is two big questions. Why then seems pretty newsworthy to me. Why is MSNBC, C-SPAN, and CNN blocking and not covering the hearing, as well as you said, cutting off the meat and potatoes of the press conference?
Because they're not journalists anymore. They're partisan hacks, and it is their job in their mind to promote the Democratic Party. And this not only is devastating for the Biden family, and I will point out one thing is that in the press conference, they did not draw a straight line to Joe Biden yet. Biden's family, absolutely, but they have not presented evidence that would indict Joe himself. But CNN, MSNBC, they gave up reporting on the truth back in 2016.
Yes, but it's kind of interesting to me that CNN, who I believe is holding a town hall with Trump tonight, was trying to resuscitate their image. Seems like they're falling back on old habits because actually, for all the BS we were talking about, shit has happened besides Don Lemon being fired. Hello, they probably just use that as an excuse that would have happened anyway, but nothing has happened. And in fact, I was, I do research for our podcast, just flicking through the channels when I get kind of a broad landscape of what's going on. I was watching Anderson Cooper, and I agree with Bill O'Reilly. I'd rather watch paint dry, but yet they don't get rid of these people. So I'm not so sure that CNN is going into any positive direction. In fact, I'm
At
rather
this
leery of that.
at this point, I don't know that CNN is going in any direction. They got rid of a lot of people who were making headlines for being really bad at their jobs. But other than that, um, and I
Yeah, I think they
understand. I've
used
said
that as an excuse to get rid of Deadwood that had nothing to do with political ideology. They got rid of Don Lemon, who was a $10 million disaster.
exactly. Now, I've said this before on the podcast. They're redoing all of Warner Brothers Discovery. So yes, turning a turning around a company that big takes time. It's like turning around an aircraft carrier. But I don't know that they're doing anything specific to CNN in terms of changing direction. And if they don't do that, they're just going to wind up back where they started.
Okay, the bigger issue, CNN's kind of, no pun intended, pretty much of a dead issue at this point. Their relevancy is almost down the drain. What political ramification does this whole corruption investigation have? Right now, Biden is at his lowest point in terms of approval ratings. He's at 36 approval generally in the latest ABC News poll, with Stephanopoulos almost had a heart attack trying to report. Um, and also, I believe it's, yes, 70% of independents think Biden is a weak president and too old for the job. So mix that all together. What, if any, impact is this corruption hearing and investigation going to have on Uncle Joe?
I think if they can prove it, it's going to be devastating. I'm not sure it's going to have a big effect until they have enough to indict, because, quite frankly, how much lower could he go? Joe Biden's approval rating isn't just the lowest of his presidency, it's the lowest of any president since Harry Truman when they started tracking this.
Yes, I agree with that. Here's what my opinion is on this. I think it will have an effect. Yes, it's going to have a much greater effect if an indictment or indictments actually come down the pike. But I believe even as the process unfolds, because he's increasingly looking like just a complete idiot. I know he always did, but it's getting really bad now, like running away after any kind of an event. And I think that the press is going to ask questions about this, and he's going to look increasingly sheepish. Not that he already doesn't, and it's just
Yeah,
going to. Is it going to plunge him any further? No, but I think 3 points, 2 points, it's 30. So it goes down to 34. Yeah, that's pretty friggin' bad,
it is bad.
and I
And
think that's what's going to happen.
the press
If
has
even if there's
already.
not an indictment, it's just going to put further fuel on the fire because Americans are going to see him basically incapable of communicating because
Well,
he's going to be on the spot.
the press has already started to turn on him. The Washington Post published an editorial a few days ago attacking him for not taking questions and not doing real interviews. And they said, and I love the quote, Biden didn't drop the mic, he lost the mic. And in the press conference earlier today, one of the um, congressman basically stated that Biden has been lying about this corruption since at least 2020, when he rigged that intelligence letter with 51 intelligence officers who, as it turned out, were working with the Biden campaign.
Plus, it probably
And
saved
they
his,
said,
it saved his chances for his presidential run because they had the best retort to Trump's
it,
accusations
and
by
that's
saying, "Well,
exactly
I
why
have the
they did it.
letter. I have
That's
the letter." That's worth 2 points in the polls, in my opinion, and that would have been enough to throw it Trump's way.
But in the press conference, when they were talking about him lying about this since 2020 and being able to, take questions, they actually said, and he was a lot more coherent then.
Who said this?
One of the congresspeople in the press conference, I don't
Nice.
recall which one, but yeah, I mean, they took shots at his being coherent because the ABC News poll literally said 70% of the country do not think he is physically or mentally capable of doing the job.
And there's my point of when he's increasingly in the hot seat over this
Yep.
process, it's going to just escalate that impression. And, 2 or 3 points when you're at 36, again, how low can you go? It's like a rumba line. Um,
And talking about the poll, though, there was an article by Time Magazine, and I will point out to our listeners that Time Magazine is owned by Time Warner, which is the owner of CNN. Time Magazine did an entire article basically trying to dismiss the poll as meaningless.
Okay, yeah, sure. I got a bridge to sell you. There
Yeah.
you go. Um, Seeing the Biden situation and seeing, I've never seen anything in this my lifetime like a presidency just collapsing unto itself, including the vice president. But you have Donald Trump up 7% before the his court case concluded, and DeSantis up 6. Your thoughts, and let's mix that in with the yesterday's verdict in the civil sexual assault case. First, let's get to the sexual assault case. Impact on the election, if any,
Well,
or the electoral process, I should say.
I think that's going to have a lot less of an effect than people think. First of all, if you take a look at the actual verdict, Trump was found liable for defamation of character because of
That's
his.
not how it's being portrayed,
Yeah,
and that's how the average American thinks.
that's not
That
how the media is talking about it. And if you read an article about it, usually you have to go down to paragraph 7 or 8 before that's mentioned. But he was not found liable for sexual assault. They don't believe that he raped her. So he was actually found liable for defamation of character.
which is about you could say that again. You can indict a ham sandwich for that.
Right. Now, this was a civil case in Manhattan where he is universally hated.
Despised.
So I think it's going to be interesting to follow the appeals. And his lawyers have already said they are going to appeal the verdict.
She
I
didn't even
think
know what date it happened. She didn't even know when it happened, and she was backed up by a Soros, not a Soros, a uber liberal socialist radical nutcase who basically put her up for it.
yeah, the court case was paid for by the former CEO of LinkedIn,
There
who
you go.
Silicon Valley, you know, uber liberal. I
He,
don't know that this is going to survive the appeal. And if it gets reversed on appeal, and I think it will have to go to federal court because New York state courts aren't going to side with Trump. I think it's going to end up going away. What we've seen over and over again is that Donald Trump has been the Teflon president. These things have been just rolling off him. They keep attacking. And seriously, I mean, she was so traumatized, she had to sue for damages. It took place almost 30 years ago, and she didn't bring charges until after Trump was started running for president.
yeah, because
It's like,
she's so traumatized, it took her 30 years to get out of it. Just kidding.
yeah,
Now, here's my view, and this I'm dead set on. Is when your house is burning, Dr. Lopkin, you don't really give a shit if the fireman who's coming in to rescue you is not a nice person, he or she. My analogy is this: America is on fire. People's savings, people, their economic outlook. In fact, Social Security buying power down 36%. New car prices up 20. Do people really give a shit anymore? When times are good, people do care if the guy is an asshole, which Trump is. However, when your house is on fire, you do not give a shit who's coming in to rescue you. Am I not correct?
you are correct, and you're not the first person I've heard this from.
Really? I
It
thought I was
it
a
is
genius.
it
I
is
thought I was a
starting
genius. Well, hell
it
with
is
that one.
it is starting to look like suburban women who turned away from Trump in 2020 and who turned away from Republican candidates in 2022 are now switching back because they're going, this is ridiculous. We can't afford food anymore. The country's falling apart. Biden is absolutely incompetent. The Democrats have made it very clear that they don't want to put a primary challenge to Biden. They're rigging their primary so that Joe Biden is the candidate. And suburban women are going, you know what? I don't care that Trump is an asshole. he did a better job than Biden did.
Yes, because when it's you never interfere with a mother and her cub. My analogy, once again, I'm full of these today. I can't tell you I'm on a roll. Just kidding. Is when it comes to feeding their family, educating their kids in a woke environment. The list can go on. Crime, and we'll talk about the subway incident in a matter of seconds. But again, people don't care. They don't give a shit who the fireman is. Put out the damn fire.
Yeah, they want the fire out. And even more importantly than that, they don't just want the fire out, they want to feel safe with the fire out. And what the Biden administration and a lot of the congressional and senatorial Democrats have been doing is they've been coming out and saying, oh, you know what? It's not as bad as you think. Things are actually going pretty well. We know you're not feeling it, but you know,
I think that
trust us.
pisses people off. It's better to be honest. Yeah, I've heard that crap from the Democrats and from Biden. Biden is incapable of taking any responsibility, okay? And that's a trait that goes before his dementia. But your comments, please. I think that pisses people off. If you tell someone, a friend or whatever, oh, don't worry about it. I didn't try to pick up your girlfriend. No, you did. It's better to admit, hey,
Yeah,
sorry, I made a mistake. Correct?
absolutely. And that has been the big problem is that they keep saying, well, believe us, not what you're seeing. And it's like, no, people are going to believe what they see, not what they're being
And that
told.
goes to our point that the fire isn't being put out because people think if you're not willing to admit or acknowledge a problem in the country or even in people's personal lives, it's never going to be solved. Yeah, I'm getting drunk at 9 o'clock in the morning, but it's not a problem. I need it to kick the coffee habit. I mean, come on, you got to admit you got a problem, and they're incapable of admitting it, and I think that
No,
pisses people off.
they're absolutely incapable. In fact, the Washington Post fact checkers gave Biden a bottomless Pinocchio because he keeps repeating the same lies. This, in particular, was about deficit reduction and the debt, but it's not the first time they've given him a bottomless Pinocchio because it's not just that he lies, it's that he repeats the lie over and over again after people have been told that this is a lie.
Well, that goes back again. That's pre-dementia. It just gets, anything in
Yeah,
dementia gets exasperated. He kind of cracks me up, even though my ass is on the line too, because I'm getting more and more scared with this guy in. But anyway, that's another issue. He's been like the George Costanza his whole life. Like he lies about things you don't even have to lie about. Like my father died, or I was born in the same hospital. My father died. I was a UPenn. I mean, don't worry about it, Joe. No one gives a shit. You don't have to lie about that.
yeah. I mean, it wasn't that long ago he was telling people, that Bo died in combat. It's like, no,
Yes.
Bo died from brain cancer. Everybody knows that. Why he lies about these things, again, it could just be he has no memory left.
It could be, and also, again, things get exact. He always was a liar. Remember, he graduated in the top of his class. Sorry, bottom. He had 3 degrees. Sorry, one. He was a UPenn. He was a UPenn
Well,
professor. Like I went to the moon. There was no chance
well,
unless he paid his way. Go ahead.
remember back in the 80s when he was running for president, he had to drop out of the race because
For
he was caught
plagiarizing.
plagiarizing speeches.
And he's so dumb he didn't plagiarize some local politician in I don't know Timbuktu, Alaska. Winston Churchill and RFK. No one's going to know that boy genius. Yeah, the UPenn professor. Please stop it immediately. Yes, it's sad, but not. But it's funny, but sometimes kind of sad. You talking about suburban mothers and suburban women. Black people are also fleeing the Biden tent. I think it was 75% support. That's been like cut in half. But looking at this situation, you have an incident. People say, "What the hell is going on?" And I think it affects suburban mothers, affects everyone, but them as well. The subway incident. Shed a little light on that. I mean, that's like, again, what the heck is going on here? It's
Yeah,
not
this
exactly the end of a good John Wayne movie, is it?
no, it's not. Jordan Neely was a homeless man that suffered from schizophrenia. He had been arrested 43 times. He had attacked women on the subway, and he was in the middle of a absolute rant. He was saying he didn't care if he died, and he was getting violent. And several people, including a Marine, stepped in to restrain him. The Marine held him in a chokehold. He was being restrained by two other people as well as the Marine. One of the people restraining him was black, as is Jordan Neely. So this had nothing to do with race. This was this man was out of control, having a mental breakdown, and he was putting people in danger. The Marine held him back, restrained him, and then put him on the floor gently in what is called the recovery position so that he would then be able to regain consciousness and be okay. As it turned out, that didn't happen, and Jordan Neely died. The
But now
liberal,
Jordan Neely, excuse me, I know I'm trying to interrupt, but just like the George, he's a hero
yeah, the
with a
liberals
twisted
went
left.
crazy. AOC started yelling, "How dare somebody kill him?" AOC showed that she is a racist
And an
because,
anti-Semite, by the way. Go ahead.
well, yes, but because Asian women have been assaulted on the subway for the last several years. Jordan Neely assaulted women. Did she come to their defense? No,
Because
because
it's not convenient,
they were
and it's not
Asian
convenient.
and they were white, and that didn't serve her narrative. She comes to the defense of Jordan Neely attacking the people who literally could have literally saved lives because Neely was going crazy because he was African American. And then Neely's family started making sounds. Oh, the Marine needs to be charged. He needs to be arrested. Really? Where were they when dealing with Jordan Neely's mental health?
Nowhere to be found. But I think it's. What do you think? It seems like a kind of a far-fetched issue. But anytime someone takes a law into their own hands, which used to be applauded in the West and when America was America, I'm not talking about abuse. I'm talking about people protecting others. Okay, being actually sacrificing their own well-being for the rights and the health of others, but it doesn't serve the liberal and the at this point radical narrative because they don't want people protecting themselves. They want you to depend on the state.
Absolutely. And this really has the hallmarks of a turning point. And I've heard a couple of people actually compare it to what was going on in New York City when Bernie Getz shot the his attackers because people in New York have had enough. They're tired of being scared. They're tired of not being able to go about their day to day business without worrying that they're going to be assaulted. And the
I think you
liberal,
may be right. You know something? It's 35 years later, but I think you have a great point. There's a breaking point to everything. And, in other words, when you're in a Twilight Zone world like the one we're in, for at least we have been in since at least the Biden administration and before then, people say, this is enough. This is it. You do agree with that, correct?
yes, I think people have had enough. And you've seen it with the number of people leaving liberal cities and liberal states. California, Washington, Oregon, New York City, Chicago, people and businesses are fleeing. The tax base is fleeing. So all that's left are the homeless and the
And the
people that
super
can't.
rich.
No, even the super rich are leaving.
There you go. Well, I have to interject this though. We didn't have this on the docket, but there's talk that as Biden implodes mentally and all the above, that Gavin, the genius Newsom, might step in. If that happens, then we are really effed. Do you think it could actually happen? The man who single-handedly, well, it was a group
I
effort, but he led the charge to destroy California.
I don't know if he could enter the race or not, given that the DNC has essentially rigged it for Joe Biden already. But he stands no chance of winning because this weekend, his reparations task
Oh
force
God.
came out with the recommendation that they pay African Americans living in California up to $1.2 million each. This plan has an $800 billion cost. And during the hearings, California African Americans were yelling that if this doesn't pass, if they don't get reparations, they will not turn out to vote for him. They will not turn out to vote for Democrats. Well, Gavin Newsom has already said reparations are not about cash payments. This $800 billion price tag is almost three times the size of the entire budget of the state of
Then what are
California.
wait? If they're not cash payments, what are they?
They're talking now about systemic changes
Oh
and
Jesus.
changes to bureaucracy.
Oh
And
golly.
but the fact of the matter is they dangled this money in front of African Americans and now they're going, "Oh, that's never going to happen."
I love
So
that.
they've
Yeah,
just lost the African American vote for Gavin Newsom.
brilliant. He's a brilliant man and a brilliant strategist. Just amazing. Let's look at a little bit of economic news. Half of Americans are extremely concerned if their deposits are safe. Don't know if that's warranted, but emotions are emotions, feelings are feelings. Paramount, this could go into woke and go broke. Paramount Entertainment is shedding 25% of their staff, including huge cuts at MTV, including the cutting of MTV News, something that maybe four people watch. But anyway, entertainment business, it's basically huge changes.
Yeah, you've seen big cutbacks at Warner Brothers Discovery, big cutbacks at Disney, big cutbacks at Paramount. Most of this is due to the switch in viewers to streaming.
Yes.
People are not watching television the way they used to. People are watching streaming services now. And all of the studios decided they needed to have their own streaming services and they were putting their programming exclusively on their own services. Well, you saw Warner Brothers Discovery make the big change that they're starting to, instead of making programming for their own service, they're selling it to other services. Why? Because when you make a program and sell it to your own streaming service, all you're doing is taking the money and moving it from one pocket to another. You're not actually making any money. Well, this change actually had an effect because HBO Max, which is shortly going to be renamed Max, finally turned profitable. None, Disney Plus has not been profitable. Paramount Plus has not been profitable. So you are seeing major cutbacks in all of the entertainment companies, primarily because of all of the money they spent on these streaming services. And honestly, I think they should go back to merging some of these services and not having system dependency on them. But MTV News, let's face it, nobody watched MTV News. And in
Yeah,
fact,
they did if you had like a couple too many bong hits and left the channel on,
well,
just by default.
and I heard something that I found absolutely hysterical from Kennedy, who was a former MTV
Yes,
VJ.
she used to do
Now,
the house. Yeah,
yes, now she's a contributor to Fox News.
love her by the way.
But she was talking about the fact that thanks to when she was at MTV, the coverage of MTV News, she is now a libertarian. So, so MTV News actually did more to hurt the Democrats and the liberals than any other news service.
Surprise, surprise. Getting back to the let's see here. Getting back to the political front, RFK Jr., who I actually like, but he'll never see the light of day. Fox, Newsmax, and One America News only, please. But he's bashing Biden over his border policy or lack thereof, and a couple of days till Title 42 ends. And Biden says, well, there could be some bumps in the road. Okay, President Lincoln, you may have a headache at the end of this.
Yeah, there may be some bumps in the road. That's basically the same way he described the Afghanistan pullout. There were some bumps in the road, but RFK Jr. is picking up steam despite the fact that
Please tell
there's
me,
no
tell our listeners. No,
there's
I'm really
no
serious
debate.
about that. Is he
And
really?
he is getting more attention. And the fact of the matter is, Democrats who don't want Biden to win have basically decided, all right, at this point, he's the only alternative they have. So he is starting to get attention. And in fact, as our longtime listeners will know, um, generally at the end of our podcast, we ask for your feedback. We have actually been getting quite a bit of feedback of people wanting us to make sure that we cover RFK Jr. because the mainstream media is not. And
And we will do that because I'm
and
totally on board with that.
we will be doing that. In fact, Friday afternoon, I got confirmation from the RFK Jr. campaign that we have been officially added to their media lists. So anytime they send out an announcement, we'll be on top of it.
Fantastic, yes. And you know something? He's always the mainstream media, CNN or MSNBC. It's just unwatchable. But CNN, they're always trying to marginalize him, make him out to be a kook because they're scared to death of him.
They
Because
are,
if Biden's incompetency really sees a hot floodlight, not a little dribble of light, a hot floodlight, game over, dude. On a debate
absolutely.
stage, I haven't smoked pot in a billion years, but I might have to make an exception because that debate, I'd pass out. I'd be laughing so hard.
Well, remember, just a few moments ago, we talked about the fact that Biden plagiarized from RFK Jr.'s father. So, I mean, imagine this. RFK Jr. is very intelligent.
Yes, he is.
He
Yes.
is not in line with the left wing of the party. He is much more centrist, which actually means he's got a better chance of pulling independents against Trump than Biden does.
Oh, and the other thing I think young people would like about him, again, the mainstream media tries to make it conspiracy, but he's very much of a populist, and I think that's a message that resonates with younger people because they've been effed over by the establishment till the cows come home.
Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. All of the traditional ideas about who is going to vote for what party have just flown out the window. Minorities are leaving the Democratic Party. Populists are now Republicans.
Goodbye. Yes.
They used to be Democrats.
Democrats are
Um,
big business, big tech, and the elites. And
and,
they use the
and
willing
that's it.
idiots to prop up their base. And that's exactly what it
Big
is.
business used to be the Republican
Republicans, yeah.
base.
Country club Republicans. No, it's the Democrats, dummy. Yeah, absolutely. Yes. I don't really know. I don't really give a shit about this story, but I figured to mention it. The psychopath Santos has been indicted. If you have any comments, please. The guy's just a nutcase. So, hello. I wish him well.
Yeah, I found it hysterical that his big comment on being indicted was it's not going to stop him from running for reelection. He has not, I don't even think he was ever officially sworn in because of what's gone on. So he has not done anything other than get himself indicted. I find it hysterical, though, that he's who the Democrats went against because his crime essentially is lying about his background to get elected. Well, guess what? So did Biden. So
Yeah.
did,
Well, he
you
made
know,
an
it's
art of
like,
it. Yes, correct.
yeah, I mean, but for some reason, Santos was just now. I'm not defending Santos because what he did was absolutely ridiculous. He should be indicted. He should be thrown out of
I think he
Congress.
should be hospitalized, to be
But
honest with you.
possibly, yes. But then again, I think all of these folks should be indicted and thrown out already. You know, it is illegal for the average American to lie to Congress. And yet, we take it for granted when Congress lies to us. This needs to change.
I would agree. Well, speaking of change, we talked about, and as a Jewish person, I'm sorry, I have the right to say this. When are they going to really leave the Democratic Party? I'm taking in droves. Hopefully that will happen. But McCarthy, who I like, I think he's done a good job so far. He's blocking Rashid Tlaib's, one of the squad member, and a big Palestinian sympathizer, which is fine, but also an anti-Semite, which is not, from holding a anti-Semitic, anti-Israeli event. Not just anti-Israeli, but calling Israel an abomination. Welcome to the new Democratic Party. Wake up, McFly. Please wake up.
Yeah, the far left wing of the Democratic
It's an
Party
anti-Semitic
is
party.
is just absolutely rife with anti-Semitism. And Jews used to be the protected class under the Democrats.
Wait,
They
wait,
were
can
the
I
ones
please can I
tending.
interject? Because that to me is fascinating. They were protected. They were on the highest pedestal. Those days are completely over. Sorry, but yes, they were right up there, and now they are no longer needed. They're not as big. They're not big enough in the population to really matter. So hasta nuega, baby.
I don't know that it has anything to do with that it's not a big enough
I
population.
do because it used to be two
I
percent of the population. It's not even one. It's you
I
can
think
gain others.
it has to do with the beliefs of the far left. Remember, they made a big deal yelling that, oh, Donald Trump was a Nazi.
I'm
The,
Nazi
the Nazi Party was the National
socialist,
Socialist Party. These far left radicals are the actual Nazis.
no
And
question.
that
So
socialism,
when are Jews going to
Jews,
wake up and spell and
well,
smell the?
that I don't know. Jews have traditionally been capitalists. That's how the Jewish people have survived because they do business, because they're good at doing business. Well, the socialists
Because they
don't
were
want
shut
you
out of
to
other areas, by the way.
right.
That's why.
But the socialists don't want you doing business. They want you desperate and dependent on them. So I think that has a bigger part of why the left has turned its back and is now massively anti Semitic, more than just the fact that it's a population shrinking.
Dr. Lotkin, I'm a big boy, and when you are correct, you are correct. Population, I'm sorry to say, I do have some pride, plays a role in it, but the bigger
Yes.
role is what you've said. Exactly. It goes, they're diametrically opposed to the left's agenda in terms of at least economically.
And yet, for some reason, there is still a large group of Jewish people who vote Democrat. And primarily, these folks vote Democrat because they've always voted Democrat and they still think the Democratic Party is the Democratic Party of 1975.
100%, but guess what? The Rolling Stones are not the Rolling Stones of 1975.
Right.
There you go. Dr. Lopkin, a great podcast today. I'm glad we're getting feedback. I'm glad we're linked in, no pun intended, to the RFK Jr. Campaign. And we'll be back next week. And again, talk to our listeners about how they can contribute to the show.
Yeah, let's hear from you. You can go to xvadio.com/connect and let us know what you're thinking. You can also, as some of our listeners have been doing, find Carnivore Radio on Facebook and message us that way. And of course, you can hear every episode of Carnivore Bites at xvadio.com/podcasts, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, Amazon Music, Audible, and other platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Lopkin. Well done.
We'll see you next time.